Hello, hi, how are you? And welcome to another podcast by George. Come on in, let's have some fun and talk some politics. And those two don't normally go together, especially recently in American history, but I think they still can. Tomorrow's election day. I'm not going to encourage everybody to go out and vote because everybody listening to this podcast is going to vote. I'm almost certain of that. The one thing I would say is go get somebody that doesn't normally vote and bring them with you, because that'll be a huge determining factor in these midterm elections. We need to get people there that don't normally vote and bring them into the process. And if that happens, it's all good. We win. And if you don't think it's important that you vote, rather than encouraging you to vote from a Democratic perspective, here's motivation. If this doesn't motivate you, nothing will. This is a op-ed piece in one of the few conservative major newspapers around. How major it is, I'm not exactly sure, but it's a Washington Examiner. And this is titled, Why Real Conservatives Will Vote Republican on Tuesday. And it says, since before President Trump took office, the Democratic base has been in a state of perpetual frenzy. And at next Tuesday's midterm congressional elections draw near, the left's fervor has grown ever more radical and vociferous. Perhaps that was to be expected, but what was less easily predicted is that many leading figures in this crusade to elect Democrats call themselves conservatives. Now, there can be no reasonable debate over whether a conservative ought to vote for Trump, either in 2016 or 2020. There are also a few places where there is a decent chance to be made that conservatives should not support Republican candidates. But if anyone tells you that conservatives should want Democrats to control Congress, that person is either deluded or a con artist. No one who cares about liberty or who is in any way socially conservative should want Chuck Schumer running the Senate or Nancy Pelosi again running the House. No conservative in their heart of hearts who really believes the country needs to keep Senators Claire McCaskill, Heidi Heitkamp, and their ilk up in the upper chamber. Only an enthusiast for the leftist big government, censorship, activist judges, subsidized abortion on demand, state-directed corporatism, and radical government-imposed social transformation would desire the elevation of Beto O'Rourke and Kristen Sinema. Okay, so stopping there just a second. Did you hear all of that? Is any of that true? That's all conservative right-wing political talking points. It's all too much. I'll tell you something. In the recent news, the thing that I thought was probably the most interesting was an appearance on MSNBC by Sully Sullenberg. Remember the American hero, the pilot that landed that jetliner in the frozen waters of the Hudson River? Well, he was making the rounds a little bit, and he's mostly a lifelong Republican, as I understand it, and he's encouraging everybody. Now, here's Lawrence O'Donnell introducing the segment with Sully. Here he goes.
And in an op-ed piece this week, he said, I feel that I now have yet another mission as a defender of our democracy. The fabric of our nation is under attack, while shame, a timeless beacon of right and wrong, seems dead. This is not the America I know and love. We're better than this. Joining our discussion now, Captain Sully Sullenberger. This really is an honor to have you here. I greatly appreciate you joining us here on this election special coverage. What moved you to write this op-ed piece?
How could I not? I felt an intense obligation to act, not just to watch, to put my voice out there, to vote, to try to make a difference. I think that's an obligation each of us has in this critical time. We can't just yell at the TV. We have to do something. We have to vote.
You say in the piece that for most of your life you were a registered Republican.
Yes.
But you always voted as an American.
Absolutely.
What does voting as an American mean to you now?
it means not in a partisan fashion, but in a fashion according to our values, in a fashion according to the threat that we're facing. This is not normal. What is happening in this country is not normal. My original title for the op-ed was Mayday, 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 which of course is the international signal for distress about a grave and imminent threat that requires immediate assistance. I am as concerned about the state of this nation as I have been in a half century since the turbulent year of 1968, and in some ways, even before that.
Man, oh man, is that any good? I mean, does that sum it up? And I know this guy probably with a military background and an aviation background and serving corporate America as a pilot was probably a darling of the right wing, but he ain't no more. That's the end of that. Good on you, Sully Sullenberg. I want to tell you something about the election, and it's this. You got to be active. You got to get out there and do everything you possibly can because these polls are showing the election as being very close. That makes you nervous anyway. But my feeling has always been that because they don't pay attention to major newspapers, because they don't like the media, because they don't like the media-sponsored polls, of course they hate government, but they don't want to participate in these polls, the Republicans. So when you see that they're trailing or they're behind or there's going to be a blue wave or they're not going to win, I'm not so sure because they don't talk to pollsters. I'm not so sure they ever pick up the phone. I'm not so sure they ever read a major metropolitan daily newspaper. I think what they mostly do is follow crap on the radio and crap on the internet, and when it comes time to vote, every single one of them gets out there and votes. And that's kind of the nature of that article in the Washington Examiner, Why Real Conservatives Will Vote Republican on Tuesday. They're going to be there. And these people, their asses have been chapping since going back to the 1920s or 30s. If you can't see that by now, give it a second look because they want to get rid of Medicare. Get rid of it. They want to get rid of Social Security. They want to they begrudge the Voting Rights Act. They hate the way the Vietnam War was administered and lost with us having to flee Saigon the way that we did. They hate and are opposed to how we proceed in the Middle East by trying to barter peace instead of just blowing the hell out of people. They don't want any more welfare. They're going to take all that stuff away. They just need a mandate. They just need an opportunity to do it, and it's almost here. They've got what they need on the Supreme Court. They've got the nut in the White House that they need in Donald Pantload Trump. And now, if they can dominate the Senate and the House, if they can win these midterm elections, if they can break the back of the Democratic Party this time around, that stuff, those things that they've been opposed to, they're going to get rid of it. It's going to happen. You're going to go back to the 1930s. So get out there and vote. And if you don't think so, if you don't think that's what this is really all about, I'm reminded of a little segment way back, going back into the 1970s, and I've got it for you here. And it's Maude and Archie fighting over FDR. That's really where all this stuff goes. I'm telling you, their asses have been chapping since FDR. And it was brought out in this piece from the 1970s in All in the Family. Listen in.
This country was ruined by Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
You're fat.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Archie, you promised never to say that name again in front of more.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Nothing. His whole family was for Roosevelt.
That was for 2 times, but that was it. We didn't know the guy was going to hang on to the job like a pope.
He hung on to save the country. The people adored him. He was a saint. That man had charisma.
I don't care if he was sick. He always had his big mouth open at them fireside chats.
Those fireside chats kept this country informed. And one, my friends, from Roosevelt, was worth a barrel full of, let me make this perfectly clear.
Oh. Now you're rapping my president, huh? Well, let me tell you one thing about Richard E. Nixon. He knows how to keep his wife at home. Roosevelt could never do that with Eleanor. She was always out on the loose, running around with the colors, telling them they was getting the short end of the stick. She was the one that discovered the colors in this country. We never knew they was there. And we've been having nothing but trouble with them ever since.
It was a question of civil rights or civil war.
We got civil war, Maud. We got rioting in the streets.
Because of poverty and unemployment.
No, because of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the first creeping socialist.
He brought the country back from the Depression.
And dumped us right to the middle of World War II.
Which he won as our commander-in-chief.
No, that's a lie. General MacArthur won that war. And Roosevelt fired him first.
That was Truman.
Under secret sealed orders from FDR.
Come on.
That's a fact, Maud. Just like that other fact. That he sold us out to Joe Stalin at Gibraltar.
They met at the altar.
He sold us out there, too. He handed all of Europe over to the Ruskies on a silver platter. I don't want to argue with you no more, Maud. And I got my chair back.
You know, Archie, I think I liked you better when you were shoving straws up your nose. I'm leaving this house.
Let her go. I got my chair back.
Archie, you can have your chair. Only don't move around too much. You'll crush your brains.
Sound familiar? Things really haven't changed that much, have they? Sure, we're talking about Trump now and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and all that, but it goes back, to the great social experiment of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Long before my time. I'm old, but I'm not that old. But still, all of those changes, all of those implementations, all of that government, all of that assistance, all of that better life that we now enjoy, all of the great country that we now reside in, they want to turn back the clock on all of that. And it'll happen. It'll happen more than you can envision if the turnout in this election tomorrow isn't high enough to turn the tide in favor of the Dems. Well, that's it. That's all there is, and there ain't no more. Just a short message about the election on another podcast by George.